Welcome back to Noir Alley. I'm your host, Eddie Muller. If you're expecting today's feature to be filled with vice rackets, Tommy guns, and rat-a-tat tough guy talk, well, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Our latest offering, released by United Artists in 1950, may be called The Underworld Story, but it's only marginally about gangsters. And once you've seen it, you'll realize the title is kind of ironic. Most of the film takes place in a peaceful New England town filled with simple, decent folks and one especially affluent clan of benevolent blue bloods. It's not a place where ugly, corrupt, and despicable things can ever happen, right? If the Underworld Story fits into a specific subset of crime movies, it's the newspaper noir. In particular, it has much in common with Billy Wilder's more celebrated Ace in the Hole, which came out the following year. Both revolve around crafty and cynical reporters whose tactics get them bounced from a big city paper. Both men try to outdistance their disgrace, starting over in small towns filled with folks they see as naive know-nothings and gullible rubes. Both stumble on a hot story that promises to be their ticket back to the big time. The reporter in this film, Mike Reese, may be an opportunistic cad, but the role was actually a step up for actor Dan Duryea. In the 40s, he shot to stardom playing smarmy and sinister psychos in some of the era's best noirs. The Woman in the Window, Scarlet Street, Black Angel, Crisscross, and Too Late for Tears. He was always the villain, one audiences loved to hate, especially when he slapped the leading lady, a Duryea trademark. In the Underworld Story, however, he's what passes for the hero. And perhaps for the first time ever, his character is complicated enough to have a character arc. Things happen that challenge Mike Reese's jaundiced view of the world, and he's forced to make choices he never imagined. His co-star, 27-year-old Gail Storm, is the last person you'd expect to find in a film noir, especially if you only know her as My Little Margie, the title character of the TV sitcom that made her a cultural icon. But that stardom was still 2 years away. The Underworld Story was the closest thing to an A drama she'd had in a career filled mostly with B westerns, musicals, and comedies, dating back to 1940. And she was spunky and appealing in all of them. In other words, a perfect foil for jaded, laconic Dan Duryea.
He who attacks me attacks my $5,000. And that goes for a she, too.
One thing more. There's no one in this town named Lufus, Mufus, or Goofus.
The Underworld Story was brought to life by independent producer Hal E. Chester, whose fascinating backstory I'll discuss after the movie. It's based on a story by prolific mystery writer Craig Rice, with a screenplay by Henry Blankford, who'd recently written the tough little B picture Open Secret, also about ugly doings in a small American town. The director is Cy Enfield, and those of you who earlier this year saw the Noir Alley screening of his powerhouse drama, Try and Get Me, well, then you know what he's capable of. Enfield's most significant contribution to this script, and he had a predilection for rewriting the films he directed, is the addition of a racial angle. In the original story, the character of Molly Rankin, accused of a terrible crime, is not African American. But Enfield dared to push that hot button, which adds an extra level to the story. Unfortunately, Hal Chester had less guts. He caved to distributors' demands that a white actress play the part, to not hurt business in southern states. Now, no offense to Mary Anderson, but her casting in blackface is an inexcusable blunder in a film I otherwise consider a minor masterpiece. Adding to the film's impact is the work of cinematographer Stanley Cortez. Although he'd learned from masters like Lee Garms and Hal Moore, he'd never shot a prestige picture until Orson Welles hired him for The Magnificent Ambersons. Cortez's painstaking process resulted in spectacular imagery, but it cost so much time and money the film fell far behind schedule. And the studio, almost out of spite, chopped Ambersons to a fraction of its intended length. And Cortez was stuck with a reputation as a persnickety perfectionist. Years later, he'd be fired from Chinatown after only a few days because he couldn't keep pace with the shooting schedule. Enfield no doubt hired him for the Underworld Story because he too was a friend of Orson Welles. Originally produced under the title The Whipped, and featuring typically strong performances from Herbert Marshall and Howard Da Silva. Here is The Underworld Story.